Well, the US Aviation Sector faces the possibility of major reform and regulation. Virgin Australia and Air Canada work to strengthen their relationship, and what airline loyalty program is the best? Let's find out right now on episode 3 of Just Plain Fun. Well, welcome to episode 3, everyone, of the Just Plain Fun podcast. I'm your host, Hunter, today, as you know. I hope everyone had a great weekend. I know that myself, I was able to relax a little bit, get outside for a couple nice walks and that, which was great. But at the same token, right now here in Alberta, we're actually facing a lot of wildfires. And so, obviously, our thoughts and prayers go out to everyone who might be losing their home or who has to evacuate. There's been a lot of evacuations. We're now in a state of emergency here in the province of Alberta. So obviously wishing everyone well there. Want to give my thanks as well to all the firefighters as well. There's a lot of air crew that are doing some flying missions to try to get these wildfires under control. So obviously we're wishing them the very best here from the Just Plain Fun podcast. Obviously a lot to go into today. There's been actually quite a bit of news here lately in the aviation sector. A bit more today on the U.S. side for our first story, but I think that it has a nice parallel to the Canadian industry. So hopefully we can examine that together. Starting off with it, there was a recent report done here by the U.S. Government Authority Office recently, and they released this report that discussed the causes of flight delays and disruptions. Obviously a bit more focused to U.S. airlines, but still can apply to our Canadian aviation sector. So they actually found in their research and in their testing that the main root cause for these delayed flights and cancellations was actually airline scheduling practices. So some people, often there might be the impression that it's a mechanical failure or some shortage that might be happening. And while those do definitely play in to some respect, the main cause, like I just mentioned in their report, was actually the airline scheduling practices where, they're trying to schedule too many flights too close together. They don't have enough pilots or enough flight attendants or enough flight staff to man the gate, etc. And they're basically banking on being able to do more flights than this report found they can actually handle. So that's what this entire report was about. It gave this kind of recommendation. If you need some nighttime reading material and you want something to fall asleep to, it's a lengthy report. I will link it down below though, but definitely has some interesting findings in it. So what are kind of the implications of this is now the Department of Transportation in the United States is working on making an effort to build its oversight to the airline scheduling practice, right? So they're looking at ensuring airlines maintain, in their words, realistic schedules to minimize the impact on passengers. Now, that's actually kind of the key point that I want to focus on for a little bit here, and actually where, I shouldn't say I take issue with it, but where there's actually maybe perhaps a cause for concern. And that is, the wording on that is quite vague. It doesn't exactly give exactly how they're going to do it, what is reasonable, what is actually a realistic schedule, and how much is a minimized impact on passengers, right? So, who is the person determining this realistic schedule? Is it going to be the Department of Transportation? Is it going to get to be the airline? Is it going to be the passengers? No one really knows. And obviously we can make the assumption here that the point is more regulation in this sector right now in the United States. And so it will be the DOT most likely who's going to have this. But that's exactly where kind of we can draw this parallel now between Canada and the United States. The deregulated aviation sector that the USA has had for decades now, when you compare that directly to us in Canada, you can see actually just how dangerous overregulating the aviation sector can be. We've obviously seen so many problems here in Canada due to, I would argue, overregulation. And so, while the US, I would say intent is probably relatively decent in wanting to make sure they can reduce the amount of delayed flights, there is obviously a few issues that we might run into. And here in Canada, actually, just recently, the transport minister that we have by the name of Omar Al-Gabara, at the end of April here, so a little bit ago, just a week and a bit ago, he announced reforms for the Canadian Transportation Agency's appeal handling process and the Canadian Transportation Act. So what basically this new reform is that's coming in is he wants airlines, and the Canadian government wants airlines to be required to handle claims and provide a response to complaints within 30 days. Again, the issue is less here about whether passengers are entitled to compensation, but more so just how the wording and regulation is so vague, where it talks about, a reasonable amount of compensation must be given to passengers who have a delayed or canceled flight. And so, obviously, who's to say that again, right? Is that the Canadian government? Is that Transport Canada? Is that the airline? Is that the passenger? That's where kind of all these issues can sometimes arise. And so it's something that I think needs to really be reevaluated and looked at from a, forward-facing lens, just to make sure that really what's happening here is not going to cause some major impact that we really don't want. Now, I would also add that, if you look at many surveys and studies, it actually seems that Canadians' patience with the amount of regulation in Canada's aviation sector has been wearing thin. And at that same time now, obviously, as I just mentioned before here, the U.S. airline industry is having many rumblings of a return to regulation. So it could be very interesting. I'll give a little side story just before we move on to the next piece here. And that is, there were a lot of people here in Canada who experienced some of the chaos that can arise from some regulation within our Canadian aviation environment, especially last summer, particularly those that went at Toronto Pearson Airport and Montreal's Trudeau Airport. It's difficult if you ever saw a photo on your Twitter or on social media or on the news of the lineups of passengers waiting in lines for hours and the mishandled baggage and unprecedented flight delays. And so, for an industry that has this extensive regulatory oversight provided by our federal government here in Canada, it's been very interesting, I think, to take a look at the differences made between Canada trying to solve the issue of flight disruptions with throwing more money at it and forcing airlines to shell more out of their pockets, as opposed to that in the U.S., where they're trying to see if they can solve actually the root cause of these delays. And so obviously I will leave it up to you as the listener to decide what approach you think would work better. But that's kind of just a little point on the news there. So moving on to our second story today, it's the Virgin Australia and Air Canada working to kind of build their relationship even more. They've been in partnership strategically since 2017, but they actually came up with a brilliant new solution, I would argue, and that's to offer seamless travel itineraries all on one ticket. So what exactly do I mean by that? Well, this now means that a traveler could check in once at Perth and travel via Brisbane on Virgin Atlantic, an Australian airline, and then continue to Vancouver or Toronto on Air Canada, all in the convenience of one ticket. Previously, there were multiple ticket booking processes and people had to line up their flights, etc. And now that's going to kind of, solve that issue, and it'll work vice versa, of course. If you're going from Toronto or Vancouver to Perth or something like that, you're able to take those options as well. Not only that, though, but with this enhanced partnership, if you want to call it that, Virgin Australia is now adding 500 destinations to its global network via its partners, and that's going to kind of tie into our next and final point as well in a little bit here. But that's also, going to enhance the passenger journey. It'll let travelers earn and redeem Velocity points, which is the Virgin Australia loyalty program, and when you're on an Air Canada service, and vice versa. One final aside that I think will be a really nice transition is that with United Airlines also seeming to double down on the region, they're part of the Star Alliance trio that is sometimes referred to as it's Air Canada, United, and Air New Zealand. I think that they're undeniably, if you look at the recent developments and recent routes that they're trying to put in, they want to dominate that Australia, New Zealand market to Canada. I think that that's just very evident in their strategic plans and in their goals in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, what have you. And so, Air New Zealand used to be the main ones that, did the direct flights between Auckland and Vancouver. They're still going to be doing that, of course, but Air Canada more recently joined that market with a seasonal service, hopefully, as they say, to get it to a full-time route as well. So, moving on to the final topic of the day, and actually, truthfully, it's one of my favorite topics when it comes to the aviation space, and that's loyalty and rewards. So a bit of background on my education. I obtained my Bachelor of Commerce with a major in marketing and a minor in finance, which was kind of a weird duo, I know, but it definitely served a lot of fun and a lot of benefits when it comes to researching some of my passions like aviation. I actually, when I was in school, I had the privilege of taking some excellent tourism and travel related courses that now have allowed me to, look at travel programs with a fine tooth comb and determine their value really overall. And so one of the key metrics, though, that I want to touch on at the very start that my professor always used to say, and it has stuck with me up until now, and I think that it always will, is that when it comes to loyalty and rewards, not only with travel, but anything, whether that's grocery stores, obviously they have a lot of rewards programs now, hotels, etc. What actually becomes important to know is that it's actually highly subjective, and it all determines what it's important to you when you're looking at these programs. And so with that, I think that, I want to make the disclaimer that what works well for me might never work for you, and what works well for me might work great for you, right? So for today, just because of time constraints, obviously, I just want to dive into two of the more well-known travel rewards programs, and that would be Aeroplan and WestJet Rewards. So we'll start with Aeroplan, and that's Air Canada's program, of course, which is actually, on the broad sense, part of the Star Alliance program. So some of the main benefits of being part of the Star Alliance program is the number of partners is certainly one of their biggest perks. So they are tied to United Airlines, Emirates, Etihad, Lufthansa, and 50 other airline partners. In fact, even a little bit more than that. And so like most loyalty programs, obviously they want to keep you within that brand. And so when they have this many partners, they're obviously focusing majorly on that piece. And also, on creating value for the consumer. You're not going to be loyal to a brand if you're not finding value in said brand. So that's why they offer, obviously, the Aeroplan points and, similar to other rewards programs in that regard. But they can actually be used for gift cards, travel, hotel stays, car rentals, honestly, anything that you can pretty well think of nowadays. And there's a few ways that you can go about earning those points. So it used to usually be that to get airline loyalty, you used to have to fly with that airline, and that was the only way to ever get any kind of status, any kind of loyalty. But now they've kind of gotten to the message of, well, if people might not be traveling with us all the time, let's see if we can get them a credit card that might actually increase their loyalty towards us and get them some more points so that they can use it on us or our partners. And so one of the most typical ways that Aeroplan does this right now is with their card that is typically offered through American Express, or also, like I said, you can do gain points by traveling with Air Canada or a partner using their portal to shop through partner company websites, what have you. And so with that, there's also a piece that I think shouldn't be overlooked, and that's on gaining status. So for Aeroplan, this is offered, in 5 steps of, I guess, for lack of a better term, advancement might be what I'm going to go with for this. And that's obviously where each tier that you go up, you're going to get more value than the previous one, or hopefully you're going to get more value than the previous one, or you won't have an incentive to try to advance. And so I'll link the page, obviously, with all the benefits, but some of the main perks, as you kind of move up in your levels, you start getting into the idea of having a specialized host that can handle all your travel needs, a personal concierge, if you want to call it that, lounge access, free luggage, cancellation, upgrades on the plane to business or first class, etc. And so I think that in that sense, that's kind of where each airline is hoping to get people to remain loyal to the brand. So, kind of gave a broad overview of Aeroplan there. Now we'll move on to WestJet Rewards before kind of going into some final remarks and final thoughts. So stick with me just for a couple more minutes. We're almost done, but we will for sure go over WestJet a little bit here as well. And they're actually partnered right now with Air France, KLM, Qantas, and Delta Airlines. So quite similar to Aeroplan in, their method of obtaining more people towards the brand. They have the Royal Bank of Canada MasterCard, which is tied to WestJet. There's a World Elite one, and then just also a basic one. So depending on income and what you're looking for in benefits, that'll determine what card you're looking for and your comfortability with annual fees, etc. And obviously, of course, then when you're flying with WestJet, you're also going to get tier points from there and tier dollars and qualifying spend. So, I think that there's obviously so much to unpack when it comes to these programs, and that might have to be a future episode in and of itself, just one episode dedicated to some of the benefits that you get with these programs. But again, with WestJet, you're going to see those different tiers. You've got your teal, your silver, your gold, and your platinum. And each one there, you're going to get a different earning rate. You're going to get different perks for the number of bags you get for free, and seat selection ahead of time, the lounge access at a lot of these airport lounges now, where you get your free food, your free drinks, etc. A nice place to kind of relax before you take off to your destination, and of course no fees for changing, etc., and priority in that. So with boarding and those terms. So I think that's kind of, some of the main benefits that you're going to see with these loyalty programs. But with that, then, that question still remains on, what program is best for you? And the thing that you'd want to consider, of course, is, what makes sense with the airline that you fly with. I know that I didn't touch on the example, but, for example, say I was thinking about flying with, British Airways a lot. It wouldn't make much sense for me to go with a non-partner airline of British Airways if I'm trying to build up loyalty and status and fly with 10 different airlines at once. At that same token, with that, then what of the partner airlines are you most likely to use? If you don't have any reason to ever worry about Lufthansa or Etihad or something like that, you might go, well, Aeroplan doesn't offer me much. You might be a Western Canadian consumer who typically we see a lot more WestJet customers here, or you might be in Eastern Canada where there's a lot more Air Canada flights. And so it just honestly totally depends on what makes most sense for you, your family, your friends, whoever your travel companions are. And therefore, look at also what benefits actually matter to you. I think that, especially in my classes that I also took and just seeing in real life, sometimes people will strive to get to that next status in any different loyalty program, but the benefits might not actually be a perk for them. Some people, they don't care at all about the lounge access and they don't care at all about a checked bag because they only ever take a carry-on, for example. And so why would that matter to you? In a true sense, it really wouldn't. So there's no point, throwing more money at something or just trying to get that one more status tier, which definitely is a marketing trick that the airlines and other companies try to use on consumers without a doubt. So yeah, with that final thing, what are you hoping to get out of your status? Are you looking just for a few free flights here and there? Are you looking for something much broader where you have so many partner airlines and different opportunities, a point system where you can use it on, gift cards and car rentals, etc.? And that's something obviously that you'll want to look into on top of that. But if you have any questions about that, you can feel free to reach out to the show. I'd love that very much. And I want to thank you again for listening to this episode of Just Plain Fun. If you do want to find me, I am on Twitter as @JustPlainFun380, or you can find me on YouTube at JustPlainFunA380. Just be for sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you never miss a future episode. It was great talking to you yet again. Have a great day. Maybe the rest of the week we'll see when we talk to you guys again. We're really looking forward to the next chat. All right. Have a good day. Bye.